the fewest since 1969. I'm Dave Anthony, Fox News Radio.
This is Viewpoint, a presentation of the News and Public Affairs Department of AM 1490 WHBB. We welcome your input on the issues of the day. You can contact us on the Viewpoint line by calling 875-1490. The opinions expressed by our callers and guests do not necessarily reflect those of the management and staff of AM 1490 WHBB. And now, here's today's Viewpoint.
And good morning and welcome into the Thursday Viewpoint. For this Thursday morning, April the 26th, 2018, I'm the host, Randy Williams. And I have the pleasure this morning of having with us as our guest, Miss Ahley Hill from C-SPAN.
Good morning.
Good morning, Ahley. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine. It's just by coincidence here. We met the other day at the press conference, or should I say after the press conference.
Right. It's okay to show up on your own time. It's fine.
I was not on time, people.
Listen, time is just a suggestion. It's just a construct. You do you.
Well, I figured that I said, well, usually many times by the time I get there, you end up having to wait for 5-10 minutes before they start. You guys had already knocked it out the way.
We're efficient, but you like to show up fashionably late to a party. That's what you do. So you showed up fashionably late to the C-SPAN party.
Tell us a little bit about yourself. I want to start with you first this morning. Where are you from?
Oh, so I'm from the southern part of West Virginia, and so I grew up in Appalachia. And being in Selma, I'm really enjoying it because I'm from a smaller town myself, and so I'm from a place where everybody knows everybody, and where you wave at your neighbors and you just talk to strangers. And that's actually how I ended up on the radio this morning. I was pulled over by the side of the road, talked to somebody, waiting for a tow truck while my tire was blown, and then here I am. So
wow, that's very interesting. So this is totally, as we call it, synchronicity.
Absolutely.
I don't hear an accent though. I don't hear a West Virginia.
It comes out. I'm gonna drop a y'all here in a second. Just you wait. It definitely comes out. But
and so, how did you get to C-SPAN?
Yeah, so I've been at C-SPAN for almost 5 years. I worked in local TV news after I graduated college in West Virginia, in Columbus, Ohio, and from there started producing a lot of weird things at a cable channel in Ohio, like cooking shows and game shows and travel and tourism shows. And I worked with the Columbus Zoo and Aquarium and Jungle Jack Hanna to try to work with animals. Now, you think working with people's hard. I can interview anybody after trying to get a giraffe to do what I wanted it on camera.
Were you able to get a giraffe to do what you wanted them to do?
Sometimes the key's snacks, and like a giraffe, I too am very snack motivated, so I understand.
But what if he had bit your hand or more than what the snack was?
I one time went elbow deep into a rhinoceros's mouth, so sometimes you give him a snack and you pat its tongue. I don't know. I've lived a weird life, and it continues to be wild and interesting by working at C-SPAN now with our C-SPAN Cities Tour, traveling the country.
Please be careful. What is it like doing the Cities Tour? What are some of the places that you've been, and what is the Cities Tour all about?
Yeah, and so, I joke that old country music song, I've Been Everywhere Man, should be the theme song for the C-SPAN Cities Tour. A lot of people think of us for our coverage of politics and government. That's our bread and butter. But our Cities Tour is kind of our initiative to get outside of D.C. where we're based. We're 3 producers who travel the country. We work with our cable partners such as Charter Spectrum here in Selma. And we embed ourselves in a city for a week at a time. We interview authors and historians to create these documentary-style pieces of programming for our Book TV network on C-SPAN 2 and our American History TV on C-SPAN 3. So everything we shoot while we're in Selma is going to air on a special weekend devoted to the city of Selma on our networks, May 19th and 20th. And then Selma's going to have a special page on our website, cspan.org/cities tour.
Oh, man, that is just, that is awesome. We really thank you for coming and choosing Selma,
oh my gosh,
for that segment.
No, and I think people in Selma for sharing their story. I mean, you and I were talking a little bit off mic about how Selma has so much history. I mean, first of all, of course, it gets attention for civil rights history, but there's so many stories to tell. But you learn about what happened in Selma with civil rights, growing up in your history classes. A lot of people nowadays have seen the movie Selma, but to be here and to see where it happened and to speak with people who lived it.
We're still alive.
100%. Yesterday I did a driving tour of the city with a woman, Ms. Diane Harris. She does historic tours of Selma now, but she was a student foot soldier during the marches, and she was kind enough to share her experiences with me. And I was blown away. I was honored and I was humbled to be able to just listen to her. And I think that's kind of been the theme of our trip as a whole. Like our whole team has kind of been honored and humbled to be here to learn about Selma's story from people who lived it, and then to be trusted to tell that story to our audience.
Well, and I didn't tell you when we first met, but I told you this morning that I have to admit I'm a C-SPAN junkie.
A nerd is what we call them. Proudly, though.
I appreciate C-SPAN because at least it gives the audience an opportunity to get the information, and we pretty much make up our own mind.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that is the power. I mean, C-SPAN was founded in 1979, and it was a radical idea at the time to just show something unedited without any editorializing, without any talking heads at all. And, jokingly, people are like, why do I want to watch a 5-hour Senate hearing? We don't expect you to sit down and watch the whole thing, but that information is there if you need it. And so a radical idea in the late 70s when we were founded, and I think still providing access to information and not telling you how to think is a radical idea today.
Even today, it was just like yesterday, the president of France, when he gave the joint, when he made the speech to the joint session. Now, we're in the media, but some of our brothers and sisters don't always, zone in or zero in on important concepts. He said much more than what's being reported. In fact, it's being underreported. This morning it is. Yesterday they were on top of it, but today I haven't heard very much about his speech. But in his speech, he talked about civil rights. He talked about women's rights. He talked about the history that France and the United States shared to go back before the Revolutionary War, and I'm just amazed. Nobody's talking about that.
Right, and I think that's what's good. I go into a lot of schools and I talk to middle and high school students about why they should be engaged in public policy and what's going on in the world in their own communities. And, and I talk about media bias sometimes and how it's great to be able to see something start to finish. I have a background working in TV news. At C-SPAN, we don't think we're better than any other media outlet. We're just different. We provide a different service. But I do know if there's a 30-minute press conference that, say, the president gives, when I worked in TV news, you're picking a 15 to 30 second soundbite tops.
Yeah, 30 seconds.
Yeah, and so it's great that it's available.
15-minute press conference, and so I like to go watch C-SPAN and see the whole thing.
Yeah, and then also it's available online. What's cool is we have this whole archives unit in our sister office in Indiana, and so we have our C-SPAN video library. Everything that airs on C-SPAN is archived indefinitely. In the end of days, there will be cockroaches in the C-SPAN video library just remaining. Over 200,000 hours of video on there now. Don't have to watch it all, but it's there.
Well, I'll tell you what I do often is I will I'll do a link from selmapostherald.com to C-SPAN.
Oh, cool.
Because you're uninterrupted with commercials, and you usually give the full program. Like when I was in Memphis, I went to Memphis for the 50th anniversary, and but C-SPAN's version and recording and video of that event outside of the Lorraine Hotel is excellent.
Oh, thank you.
I said, well, I'm going to opt in and use C-SPAN, link to C-SPAN. Let that play, because it did the whole thing from start to finish.
Yeah.
And the quality, you can't beat the quality. The sound, everything was
thank you.
Yeah, you guys did a wonderful
we
job.
do that, and we'll show something start to finish. And then we do have our cities tour where we edit different kind of pieces. But what's really important is it's not about us. Whenever we tell a story as producers on the cities tour, you don't see us on camera a lot. I mean, occasionally, time to time. But we want to hear people tell their own stories. We want to hear about, what happened in Selma from the people who lived it. Or, we want to hear from the experts on a topic, because who knows better than the people who live in a community? Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
But isn't that what makes a good producer, to be able to let the story be told?
I hope so, yeah. That doesn't sound humble to be like, yeah, we're great. But I think I've learned a lot. I've worked in TV for so many years, and when I got to C-SPAN, learning to tell stories in that way was kind of this light bulb moment for me, where it's things don't have to be about me. They are really about the people, and I feel like me as a producer, I can only speak for myself. I feel like I know how to tell better stories now, and I know how to just listen to people in my day-to-day life better. You know, I think probably as people, we do a lot better if we just maybe talk less and listen to more, and it's helped me learn to do that.
I'm still working on it, even as a talk show host. When I get into the call-in mode, I'm still growing, to become a better, interviewer and host by listening. A better listener is the word I'm looking for.
And I mean, you can't get me to shut up, so I should probably take that talk less to heart. I say it, I gotta practice what I preach.
Not when you're the guest. We need you to talk.
I'm just gonna be quiet the rest of the show. No, I'm kidding.
Yes, no answer.
Yeah, I'm giving those interviews like Prince. I always watch all these old interviews. Prince is my favorite musician, and so I'll see him do like old clips from interviews, and he'll just be yes, no. But he's Prince, so he can pull that off. I don't think I can.
No, you're fine. You're fine. We're gonna open the phone lines up.
Yeah.
And I kind of told you the Viewpoint. It's no telling where we'll go.
Oh, I love that. I'm along for the ride, guys.
So 875-1490 is the number to call. We've got a few Viewpoint C-SPAN junkies that listen to this show also.
Oh, right.
So this ought to be a real treat for them, huh? 875-1490 is the number to call if you have comments or questions. Viewpoint, you're on air.
Hello, how you doing, Randy Williams?
Yes, sir. How are you this morning?
I'm doing very well. Hello, Miss Ahley Hill. How are you?
Good. How you doing this morning?
I'm doing very well. Now, I understand that the city tour is, well, you just mentioned that y'all focuses on civil rights, but I have a suggestion that you might want to consider, and that what's going on currently in the city is what I think a focus ought to be. And there's a focus that ought to be provided in that documentary. You should interview people who live in the city, who have some insight as to what's going on in the city.
Yeah, current modern times is what you're saying.
Yes, I mean, history is past, present, and future. History ain't just what events that just happened in the past,
Yeah, absolutely. And so what's been really great about being here in Selma is we've interviewed your mayor about the state of Selma today, and you'll be able to catch that interview. We interviewed your first African-American mayor, Reverend Perkins, earlier this week as well, to kind of get his thoughts on Selma today. And then yesterday I did a driving tour of the city with Ms. Diane Harris, as I mentioned earlier, who was a foot soldier during the marches, but we also talked about how she's seen Selma change over the years, and what Selma is like today. And I think it's cool getting to be here for almost an entire week in your city, because not only are we interviewing people on camera, but we're just talking to people on the streets. I've been at the coffee shop, I've been just pulled over in my C-SPAN van, and people have stopped me by the side of the road to chat, and I really feel like we've got to have this dialogue with the community that I really hope shapes the programming that we air. Thank you so much for that suggestion.
All right. Are you still interviewing people?
Today's our very last day. We're wrapping it up, and unfortunately, we're heading out of town this afternoon.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Ashley.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for calling. 875-1490 is the number to call if you have comments or questions. Now, but Selma's history is not restricted to civil rights.
Absolutely not.
And the Civil War history, and as I listened to the French president yesterday, I was reminded that Selma's first name is French.
Yeah.
And we share history with the founder of Mobile in New Orleans. Mm-hmm. So
where we're heading next, by the way, is New Orleans.
We're headed to New Orleans.
Oh yeah, really? Driving this afternoon.
Oh my goodness. Oh man.
Not a bad trip. Yeah, you're right. And we're doing other stories aside from just the civil rights history. So as you mentioned, we're talking about the Civil War. We visited the Old Depot Museum this week.
Excellent.
And we talked about Selma's role as a manufacturing center during the Civil War.
Second only behind Richmond.
Behind Richmond, Tredegar Iron Works, which we did a story on a couple years ago. So we're doing that and talking about the Battle of Selma and just Selma's role in that era. We're talking about the city's founding. Selma, and as you mentioned, it was named actually by a former vice president under Franklin Pierce.
A lot of people don't realize that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he's buried here. Did you go to Live Oak Cemetery?
My colleagues went yesterday, and I just drove through with Ms. Harris, and it was incredible. It just looked incredible there. It looked like a movie set almost. And so we're talking about that. We visited a few of the notable grave sites there, and we're talking about how Selma was named. It means throne, right? And so we're doing that story and just a number of other things in addition to the civil rights history. Selma has a lot of stories.
So before you got here and now, after having spent a few days, what is your impression? Your general impression of Selma? What are you walking away with, or are you still digesting it?
You know, I think when I go to a city, I don't fully get to digest until I'm back in D.C. and I have that comparison. We're based out of Washington, D.C. But right now, I mean, what's great about going to just around the country as a whole, you see the similarities that we all have and the differences that we all have. And so for Selma, number one, I think this is a town that's really proud of its history and really engaged in its city, and I love that. And it's a town that's been really welcoming as well. You know, you talk about that Southern hospitality, it sure does have it. Like I said, people just stopping me by the side of the road and chatting. And I'm really glad that it's a place that honors its story, and I hope it continues to do so.
Okay, Viewpoint, you're on the air, caller.
Good morning.
Good morning, how are you?
All right. Ashley, I'm not going to tell anyone, but I'm going to ask you, will you please tell me your age?
What? A lady doesn't tell. No, I'm 34 years old. I'm still somewhat young. Does that count as young? I don't know.
Oh yeah.
Proud of your experiences. When I returned to Selma, I was 36 years old, and I'm proud of the experiences that I had been afforded to. I'm a Selma native. My brother is Cleophas Hobbs, who was one of the original SNCC members, organized by Bernard Lafayette. They were young men that you found on the corner of Church and now L.L. Anderson, who was also a prime worker in this community during the civil rights years. I just wanted to ask you your age because I'm just proud of the experiences. I have watched a lot of your, I don't know whether we call them documentaries of the cities or the history of the cities or whatever you refer to it professionally, but I have enjoyed all of the cities featured, and I mentioned to Randy the other day, I was wondering when you all were going to get around to us. And thank you for being here.
Oh my goodness, thank you so much. And you know what? It's great. I think we should never actually, I'm joking, be ashamed of our age because like you said, you should be proud of the experiences that you have and you learn and grow. And I love hearing that from you. And thank you so much for welcoming us.
Let me just say one other thing.
Yes, ma'am.
There had been some controversy. I'm glad you got a chance to talk to the present mayor and the former mayor. I also want to ask you if you have gotten a chance to talk to Mr. Bruce Boynton about his mother's pivotal role that was afforded to this community. Bruce Boynton is he's a character within himself because he's also responsible for some major passage of national bills in the Congress. Let me also say this, and I'll quickly, there's been some controversy about Reverend Perkins recently, and Reverend Perkins is a classmate of mine, a schoolmate of mine, and I just like to say, because of the controversy and all the other candidates we have, I have taken Mr. Perkins' sign out and put it in my yard. I want people to know if we look at the list of candidates that we have now and the people that have served us well in the past, whether you approve of everything that they have done, we could be moving much quicker to achieve some of the goals that we should have achieved a long time ago. And thank you again for being here, Ms. Hill, and your staff. Bye-bye.
Oh, thank you so much. And, I can't weigh in on who you should vote for or what candidate is the best candidate, but I will say that he was very gracious in taking his time to let me interview him, and he was very open and honest about his experiences growing up in Selma and how that shaped him, which was really, really great to hear.
Okay, Viewpoint, you're on the air.
Good morning.
Yes, sir. Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good so far. How y'all doing?
We're doing fine.
Doing great.
I heard your guest talking about civil rights, right?
Yes, sir.
I've been trying to deal with civil rights ever since it went into effect. But called the United States Supreme Court, the way it made, if you really don't understand how civil rights work. It's very hard for a person to deal with it.
So what is it that what is your point?
Civil rights, people can discriminate against you if you ain't able to point out what that person did and who did it. And you don't have no witness. You ain't got a case.
So you got to be able to document it, is what you're saying, huh?
Yeah, right.
Let me tell you a little bit about you. This gentleman that's on the air. He just recently turned 89.
Oh, happy birthday!
And I found I've got your video from your 89th birthday party that your family gave you. He is one of the marchers from Selma and Montgomery.
Oh, wow.
And he got the medallion, when they did the 50th anniversary of the Selma and Montgomery March. President Obama gave some congressional medals out.
Wow.
And so he's one of the people that got a congressional medal.
That's phenomenal. I can't imagine. I can't imagine being in your shoes and having the courage to do that and to stand up for what's right, and I commend you wholeheartedly. Thank you.
He was in the movie with Oprah?
Oh my gosh. Don't even get me started on my love of Oprah.
Oh my goodness. Well, anything else, Colin?
Yeah, now, see, I was one father, Clarence Thomas was head of the East Harbor too. I was filing complaints. He never would do it. So finally, I wrote to President Johnson a letter and asking him what good is the Civil Rights Bill and the Voting Rights Act, and nobody did enforce it. He started pressing the lawyer here. Maybe you know Don Lowe. Do you know him?
What year are you talking about when you sent the letter and he sent his attorney? Which year?
67.
1967. Okay.
Right.
Yeah, okay. All right. Well, we gotta get ready to take a break.
Okay.
But thank you so much for calling. And you touched on Oprah. Now, I used to joke several years before the movie Selma. I used to jokingly say, well, Oprah's coming to Selma. Little did I know. Yeah, it was wonderful. Is
that possible? Are you able to summon Oprah if you have that power?
I wish. If I did, we'd go ahead and do it. You know what I mean? And have a conversation with her,
All I want is her just to say my name in that Oprah way. You know how she does like John Travolta, where she's like, Ahley Hill. That's all I want in life. So.
Have you guys interviewed her yet? Or?
Oh gosh, no. Oh, please.
C-SPAN is pretty big now.
Listen, I personally haven't, but if I did, that's how I would lead everything. Like, I would meet a stranger, and I would be like, hi, my name's Ahley. I've met Oprah. Just want to put that out there, first of all.
Well, this young lady, I'll tell you, is really, you're, like I said, a breath of fresh air.
Thank you.
So, you have a lot of energy, And,
it's all coffee and listening to power jams in the mornings. You got to listen to some upbeat songs and drink a lot of coffee, and you're ready to go.
That's crazy. Tell you what, we're going to take a break, and we'll be back with more right after this.
Farmers Co-op store in Selma. Tim, I heard you got some wine.
My conversation about the virtues of coffee. It seems like every couple of months they have a different survey or different study that either says coffee is good for you or coffee is bad.
I don't care if it's bad. I'm going for it anyways.
Well, you see this canister, right?
Oh, man after my heart right there. That's like a gallon jug of coffee. That's like a milk jug of coffee right there. I support it. Do what you gotta do.
So tell our audience, where you're going next with the city tours we'll be doing the next several weeks.
Oh my gosh. Well, we are busy bees, that's for sure. So we have two teams of folks who do this, one on the eastern side of the Mississippi and one on the western side. So our eastern folks, we're heading to New Orleans next. But am I saying that right? Aren't you supposed to say like Nolans?
No,
New Orleans? Yeah, what's your pronunciation?
I say New Orleans.
New Orleans. Okay, me too. Okay, yeah, I got that. That's me.
Well, I have probably an East Coast, some words are pronounced East Coast, some are pronounced Northeast, and some are pronounced Southern.
That's good. It's a good mix of like what do you say for? I had the debate yesterday of pecan versus pecan?
I say pecans and I say pecans. I say both. It depends. It depends on who I'm talking to, I think.
If it's a baked good, I say pecan. If it's the nut, I say, I don't know. Anyways, we just got off topic here, but I do love talking about colloquialisms and pronunciation, and I grew up with a Southern mammal, so a lot of my words come out that way. And
that's the thing. Now, we hadn't talked about, my background in terms of radio, in terms of where I've worked. And I jokingly, not jokingly, I was telling the general manager here last week or so that I worked in Virginia Beach.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I did WQRK. In fact, I replaced Tim Reed. Did WQRP.
Wait, no, you get out of town.
Sure
I love WQRP. We can sing that theme song right now if you'd like.
And they just brought it back. In fact, they just on MeTV, I think they're doing.
Yeah, I'll watch that. I'm here for it.
But anyway, the program director, a guy by the name of Steve Warren, said to me, and he would work with me. He said, "I want to help you learn how not to have an ethnic sound. How to blend in." But my voice blended in with the staff already. But some words, again, like we're talking about, some are pronounced, one way from a colloquial standpoint, or another, depending on what part of the country you're in. But Walter Cronkite is probably the best example.
Oh yeah,
of a person.
Was a legend.
Yeah, he was a legend, but you couldn't tell what part of the country he was from.
That's true. And I think I lost a little bit of my accent when I got into television, but I love hearing people talk the way that they talk. I mean, I think there's something to be said for that, and to be proud of who you are and where you come from. So.
Well, I sure hate that you missed. We have a regular caller that we call, her name is Madam Butterfly.
Oh, okay.
And she, in fact, she was the one that was responsible for the butterfly emblem that you see on the city seal.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, she passed away just a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, I'm
she
sorry
was 92,
to hear that.
somewhere in that
That's a good long life.
Yes, ma'am. But she had a distinctive Southern dialect. And so she was a perfect example. You could tell, that she was from the South, And a lot of people love to hear a Southern dialect.
Oh, yeah, I love that Southern drawl. I mean, I think I grew up in Appalachia, and, I think a lot of the times, being from Appalachia, you have, there's a stigma and a stereotype about where you're from, and being
just
young.
Like from the Black Belt of Alabama.
Absolutely, and so you can relate to that, and I think, being young and foolish, you think that you can rise above where you're from, or you don't want to have that stigma or stereotype, and so I lost it. But
so
now,
you say you're from Charleston instead of
yeah, exactly, instead of the tiny little town that I am from.
Right.
And now, I'm so proud of where I'm from, and it's shaped who I am so much. I regret having that attitude before, and so I say use your accent, and I think that's something that I really take to heart too, traveling around with the Cities Tour, is that where you're from does shape who you are. And so telling these stories of place feels important to me. And maybe that's just, me not being humble about what we're doing. But it does. It's an honor to talk about where people are from and to talk about the stories of these different towns.
Well, what's interesting, and we're going to go back to the phone line, but I want you to think about this while so I don't just throw it on you, but having that conversation with so many parts of the country should put you should have your finger on the pulse of the nation in terms of what's the real narrative, you know what I mean?
Right.
And I want to talk about some of that we're going to touch on a little bit. Viewpoint, you still there, caller?
Yes, I'm still here. Ashley, could I get your email address?
What's that? Oh, yeah, so at C-SPAN, please reach out to us. My C-SPAN email address is ahill@cspan.org. And then our C-SPAN, we're on Twitter as well, so please follow us at C-SPAN Cities.
Okay, thank you, caller. As I told you earlier, before you came on, the one luxury that I don't have on this program is not only don't I have a screener, I don't even have caller ID.
No, I would say, you know what? Send us some emails about summer. We'll see how it goes.
I know there's at least one station locally that has a call-in talk show. I know they have caller ID. And
I like the luck of the draw.
Well, I'm told they won't answer some people. And so I say, I don't want it. I don't want caller ID. Cause I may not answer sometime, so I'm like you, let's do the luck of the draw. But, I've been working with several organizations over the years. One, of course, is now the Kellogg Foundation with the Truth and Racial Healing and Transformation. They have an initiative that they're doing all over the country. And one of the points that they make, one of the major components of what that initiative is on changing the narrative on race. What has been your experience in this city's tours? Does race come up as an issue or a topic, and if so, how do people handle it?
Yeah, I think race does come up. I mean, especially when we're in the South, there's a lot of stories of race. So we were in Richmond, Virginia, where they have just a whole line of Confederate statues, and so I took
Monument Avenue.
Yes, Monument Avenue.
Mm-hmm.
And so I took a driving tour of the city with their mayor, who is a young African-American man, and we had this dialogue about his thoughts on Monument Avenue, and about, the merit of where do you draw the line in keeping this history, and when do you say, this was a bad thing to honor. And so we definitely had those dialogues, and I think with C-SPAN, it's really important for us not to put ourselves in it and to let people give their opinions, such as the mayor and people here.
Did you do Hope in the Cities by chance while you were in Richmond? Did you do Hope in the Cities or any of those other organizations?
We unfortunately didn't, but we'll have to look into that if we circle back around. But I think, for us, race definitely does come up in the stories that we tell. I mean, we do stories about the Civil War, we do stories about about civil rights, and it's keeping with that C-SPAN mission, let people tell their own stories. And I think keeping with my own mission, people can't see me. I'm young and white, and I've not had to deal with racism in my life. And I think for me, it goes back to speaking less and listening more, and seeing what I can learn from other people and their experiences.
But you're from Appalachia, though. In being able to break into the D.C. market and to put on your resume that you're from the Appalachians and from West Virginia, that's typically not...
For me, as I travel around the country and I go do guest speaking a lot of places, and I go into colleges and universities and guest lecture, and there's a part of me that always wonders, like in the back of my mind, I'm like, I'm just some girl from Appalachia. I'm just some country backwoods girl, and are they going to figure that out and be like, what is she doing here? Like jokingly in the back of my mind, I always think that because where I'm from has shaped me so much. But yeah, absolutely. And I think that it goes that we shouldn't probably have these stereotypes of people and this like ingrained discrimination against people on where they're from or how they look or how much money they make or who they are. And I think that's an
I don't get any of that from you, and I'll go a step further and say that I would suspect that you were like that before you got to DC.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that.
So if that's
I blame that on my, or credit that to my upbringing.
So I was about to say, it had to have started at home, huh?
Oh, yeah. I spent a lot of time around my mammas. That's what we call our grandmas in West Virginia, growing up. And, I learned a lot. You can learn a lot from the older generation, I think. And so I learned to be respectful of everybody and kind to everyone.
Kindness.
Kindness is the key, always.
I tell people that men...
Help raise money for cystic fibrosis. Thursday, April 26th.
Viewpoint, we're back on it. We're talking about Ashley and I are exploring the possibility of being co-host on a radio show. I actually used to do The Quiet Storm when I was in Richmond.
The Quiet Storm. That's a good name.
It caught on in D.C.
Nice.
So you're talking about what would we play now? Let me back up so the people know what we're talking about. Ashley gave me a card the other day, and I didn't have my reading glasses on. And it said Ahley Hill at cspan.com, but I thought it was a C, and I said, is this chill at cspan.com?
I wish.
So Ashley and I are going to do a program called Chill at C-SPAN.
Yeah, and we're just going to play the smoothest slow jams.
We're going to just...
It's like Luther Vandross and... What'd you play on Quiet Storm?
Quiet Storm.
I saw Smokey play about a year and a half ago. He's still got it. It's so amazing. I love the miracles.
Smokey Robinson is probably one of the best entertainers I've ever seen in my life.
Songwriter, performer,
and a comedian. He is really funny. He is the funniest guy I've ever seen.
Is he? I didn't get to hear him talk much. He played though.
Lord, if you ever get a chance to hear him, if he ever really relaxes, he's awesome.
What's your favorite
guy.
Smokey jam or miracles? You can
probably Quiet Storm.
Yeah. Mine, it's probably Ooh Baby Baby or You Really Got a Hold on Me.
Yeah, see, you're Stax, you're Motown, all of that.
I'm collecting it all on wax, let me tell you.
So we would knock them dead, I can tell you that.
Yeah, I think it would be a hit.
Yeah, I'm sure it would. That is too funny. Let's go back to the phone line. You there, caller?
Yes, sir. Randy. How you doing?
Hey, how are you this morning?
Doing good. I'm communicating with my folks in Tennessee. I was talking to a cousin. She was saying she couldn't get her sons out the house. The daughter's married and left the house, but we got a generation of African-American males that's coming after me, act like they don't want to get married. I don't know what's wrong with them, Doc. I'm trying to figure them out.
Well, you know, that whole issue...
And I think I know where the breakdown went down, Randy, and me and my dad used to fight about it every day. We used to literally get fussing and fighting about it. Until that is ratified, you're going to have messed up young men.
Well, it's an issue. It's no doubt. It's certainly an issue. Thank you.
My uncle, and Randy.
Go ahead.
Okay, and Nashville on the radio station yesterday, the girls was complaining because they didn't have no men. My uncle told me that, and I said, well, strange that me and my first cousin was talking about the same thing. And Randy, I'm going to tell you something. Some folk getting ready to come behind y'all and tell them, because I told some folk, I said, you need to come down and see this.
Well, I hear you. Well, thank you for pointing that out to us. So Ashley, you hear that there's a shortage of men.
Well, I mean, I'll put out some calls if you'd like. See if anybody I know wants to come on down.
Well, we better not do it like that. We
could also do a dating show. Could be our other thing after Chill.
After
Chill, we do a resurgence of the Love Connection. Do you remember that show from like the 80s and 90s where we like hook two people up, we find out how their date went?
I've never seen anybody do what happened after the Love Connection.
Oh, yeah, we'll follow up.
See, I want to follow up. I wonder how many of those people actually continued their
probably zero. I'm thinking zero of them.
I think it was a one night.
Yeah. You know, this is what we'll find out on our show. We got a lot in the works over here. This is my last C-SPAN trip. I got to stop and stay in Alabama so we can work on our radio shows.
But now, do you ever get a break? I mean, you know, how often do you have to hit the road and stay gone? Are you married or single? I don't see the wedding.
Oh, Lord.
Wait a minute, people. Look. Behind that.
Oh, I gotta fan myself.
That could be taken different.
We're getting personal up in here. I'm not a married lady. I'm not married. But I do travel a week at a time. I have a very cute dog, if that counts. Her name's Zelda.
What do you do with the dog?
And so someone watches her while I'm gone, and so a little rescue dog. But yeah, so I'm gone we do a week a month on each team. Sometimes we do 2 weeks a month, and we'll hit 2 cities at a time. So
that sounds like that's what you're getting ready to do. Are you getting ready to do a 2-week deal?
Well, no. So we're heading on down to New Orleans, and then we fly back to DC from there, and we'll edit all of our stuff from Selma and get it ready for our weekend of programming about Selma, and start prepping for our next trip, where we'll fly back to New Orleans and spend a week there.
What do you do with your vehicles?
Yeah, it's cool. So we drive around in the country in what we call our local content vehicles. They're these big C-SPAN vans. You can't miss them. C-SPAN's plastered on the side. It means I can cut nobody off in traffic because they know that I'm with the company. Yeah, no. And so we drive them, and they have everything that we need to shoot, edit, and produce pieces on the road for our networks. And we leave them parked in storage, and then we fly back, and we come back, and we pick up our vans and drive them on to the next location.
So you park them in storage from the city wherever you end up at, somewhere near, you'll go back and get them.
Yeah, and it's cool because we fly, but we also just get to driving America, and I could talk about this and romanticize it forever. People are like, oh Lord, an 8-hour car drive, and I'm like, yes, an 8-hour car drive, because you see so much that you wouldn't if you just fly. Like, you see the beautiful landscapes, you see the different ways that people live here in our own country, and all the different cultures that are here. You get to stop and eat some good food on the way, and so it's awesome. I love driving the country.
Well, one of the things on my things to do list is I want to take do the Amtrak scenic route of the West. You know what I mean?
You should. So I took the Amtrak from St. Louis to Albuquerque, and just like as you start to see that landscape change as you go out to the West, it's just amazing.
I bet that is amazing. And I've been told that from Chicago to Seattle and Seattle to San Francisco, and then through Colorado.
Do it all. See it all. America is so beautiful, and there are so many things to see here in our own country.
Yeah. That's on my things to do list. I'm a train guy. I like to train.
Now, do you want to join the C-SPAN Cities Tour crew? We can swap. You can drive around the country for a while. I will be here, and I'll talk on the radio. I am going to start playing some jams, so that's the one thing.
I'll let you come and do a break. I don't know if I want to travel around the country anymore. I've already done it.
Okay, this could just be like a temporary job swatch.
I survived traveling around the country, so I don't know. Although it sounds tempting, though, because I tell you what, you guys, that is envious. I would love to do the Midwest. I would like to do the West. Yeah.
There's so much to see, and so many stories to tell.
Yeah, and so how do you choose your stories, or do you like the spontaneity of what you do, or how does that
there's definitely prep work that goes into it. So when we get back into our offices, we start editing the programming that we've recorded, but we also start prepping for the next city. And I always call it a great human treasure hunt, where I'll just start cold calling places. I'll do a Google, I'll call the city. We work with our cable partners, such as Charter Spectrum here in Selma, who led us in the right direction. So a guy we're working with, Robert Smith there, Smitty, he knew a lot of people in Selma, and he was able to direct us to them. But you call one person and you explain what you're doing, and they'll say, hey, yes, I have a story for you, but you should also talk to my friend.
Right.
And so it's great to see these like little threads that weave through these towns, and one person leads you to another.
So how helpful was the Chamber of Commerce and Cheryl Smedley?
Oh my goodness. So Cheryl was a doll. Cheryl was really great. I called Cheryl just out of nowhere. She didn't know me from anybody, and I'm like, hey, this is random, and she was so on board from the get-go. She sent me a list of people that we should talk to and interview, many of whom we did, of places we should go. She even sent me a list of places we should eat while we're in town, which
so you said
is in my heart.
You did Laney's. No, you said
my coworkers did Laney's, and they did tell me, as we were discussing, that the sweet tea there is sweet enough to almost give you the sugar diabetes, which my mamaw and especially my mamaw's sister, my great aunt Vera, she's still living, and to this day she will make a sweet tea that is like pure sugar, and that's how we like it. Like if you're sitting on a front porch drinking anything that's not just like a skosh away from making you sick with its sweetness, you're doing it wrong. Yeah.
That's crazy. I'll tell you, and it was one of the, so you did the Jackson house, Mrs. Jackson's house? Yeah.
Let me tell you, so doing the Jackson house, and what you see, the Jackson house depicted in the movie Selma, and then
they don't do it justice.
I'm sure. And to be here, though, and I called up Ms. Jackson's daughter, Joanna, just again, out of nowhere, just out of the blue, explained to her what C-SPAN was doing. And she started to tell me about the house and her parents and her mother's book. And she just offhandedly mentions Uncle Marty. And I was like, whoa, excuse me? And she was like, yeah, there wasn't a Dr. King to me. It was Uncle Marty. And I was just blown away to be talking on the phone to somebody who, is this interesting thread in the fabric of American history.
Well, see, what people don't know, and a lot of folks, and I was Mrs. Jackson's photographer.
Oh, wow.
And I helped her edit a book.
That's awesome.
And what I learned that I didn't know after we, became friends, is that Dr. King had been coming into Selma since the 50s.
Oh, wow.
But he never interfered or got involved in local affairs until after he was invited in by the late Dr. Reese, who just passed away, in a part of that whole Courageous 8. I'm sure you guys did something
yes, sir.
on that, huh?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's good. Did you go into the house and
so my colleague did. Here's the thing that's great and awful about our setup. So we're all one-man bands, as we say, or I like to call us human Swiss Army knives, because we can shoot, edit, and produce our own pieces. We can do public speaking. Yeah. We really do something start to finish. And so when we go to a town, there's only 3 of us, and we got to cover a lot of ground. Yeah. And so we all go our own directions, which means sometimes your coworker gets to do something real awesome and you do not get to go with them, which is a bummer. So my coworker, she's our book TV producer, Tiffany Rock. She got to spend the day at the house interviewing Ms. Jackson, and I was envious.
Yeah, because the room where he slept, and the telephone that he used.
Still the same as it was.
The same television, the same chair.
That's amazing.
The Time magazine had on the front page of their 50th anniversary issue is still in the House.
That's so amazing to me and so incredible.
Tell you what, we're going to take this last break, and we're going to start wrapping up. We'll be back with more right after this.
Oh, I am craving a Dr. Pepper. Got any?
Yeah, sure. I got some soda.
Hold up. I asked not for soda. No, I asked for ice cold, craveable Dr. Pepper. And what you got is not Dr. Pepper. Dr. Pepper is like a beautiful...
District 3. 1490 WHBB, as we begin to wrap up today's program. So we were talking off mic about how different cities have areas that are deteriorating, infrastructure, roads, houses, what are you finding is happening in other places, and how do you address trying to preserve, or are they even preservation conscious in different cities?
Yeah, I mean, for me, we were talking about this, like, they don't make them like they used to. I love the old stuff. I mean, I'm wearing a vintage dress now. I like music on wax. I like the old stuff, and I like these, old buildings, and I think that we need to honor our history more, and I'm hoping that people are starting to see that. But just as in some parts of Selma and in some parts of my own hometown and everywhere, they do have these infrastructure issues where, some parts of town are getting a little more run down, and it's hard because you have to have money to address those things, and I sure know that in my Appalachian town, we don't have it, and I think that's an issue, and so I'm hoping that maybe there will be this shift of people appreciating the old stuff instead of just knocking it down and building something new.
Do you find that people are polarized politically in some of the other cities in terms of partisan politics? Is that pretty much the case?
Yeah, you get that sometimes, definitely. In relation to a lot of topics, of course. And then as C-SPAN, as political junkies at C-SPAN, we eat that up. We want to hear about it. And it's really interesting to hear. But yeah, I think there's always that push and pull and that tug. And you just hope that the exchange of ideas is a good dialogue and people listen to each other.
Well, now, I hear President Trump has jumped on everybody just about, except C-SPAN. I think
we're just flying right under that radar, y'all.
I don't think he's seen anything about you can't call you fake news, huh?
And that's, at C-SPAN, we do take our commitment to being non-biased very seriously. I mean, our version of the show is Washington Journal of the Mornings, and we have phone numbers to call in based if you're conservative, liberal, independent, and we try to evenly take calls from people on all sides of the aisle. In all of our coverage, again, you never have a talking head being like, oh, the president did a great job, or oh, he did a terrible job, or this or that. We just show it without comment. You make your own decisions, and I think there's a power in that.
Now, do people honor that? Do you ever have an independent that calls on the Democratic line?
We do have call screeners. Unlike you, which I think your way is far more exciting. Just luck of the draw.
It's more exciting, but your way is safer.
That's no, I'm kidding. It's not boring, but I do like what you got going. It's a good thing.
Well, thank you so much, Ashley. It has been a pleasure.
It's been my pleasure.
That we would do this show when we met. As you say, synchronicity kicked in.
Absolutely, and this has been an absolute pleasure to get to talk about C-SPAN and our time in Selma, and then to get to talk to people from the community has been awesome. I've loved every minute of it. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for coming. And we have a safe journey to all of your cities. And hopefully, this will be the beginning of. We can work on that.
Chill. C-SPAN. We'll start laying that groundwork.
Stay tuned for Fox News up next on WHBB Selma. I'll see you tomorrow morning. The good Lord willing. Fox News is next. It's 9 o'clock.
The doctor is out. I'm Dave Anthony, Fox News. Ronnie Jackson takes himself out of consideration for the head of the VA.
Democrats are obstructing.